Hey y'all, welcome back to another ASOTU Edge webinar. We are so glad that you're here. Today's going to be part one of a two-part series on advertising strategies with our friends at Stream Companies. Today we're going to be talking about auditing your 2024 advertising performance. So on the ASOTU side, we're going to have Paul J. Diehl, CEO, and Kyle Mountsier, COO. And from Stream Companies, we're going to be joined by our dear friend Subi Ghosh, EVP of Strategic Partnerships, Diehl, SVP of Digital Marketing, and Sarah West, Vice President of Integrated Media. So we've got a great show in store for you. We'll see you in a little bit. Enjoy.
Hey there.
Oh, hey.
One of our favorite topics. We've been excited about this one for too long, I feel like.
Honestly, I wasn't expecting to have conversations about like year in review this early, but
dude, we're halfway through November.
I know we're halfway through November, but I'm glad we are, because a lot of people just like, you just don't start thinking about, what happened and how do we get better. We do that on a monthly basis so regularly, so willingly in auto, but we don't like take a minute to go back and go, here's the last 12 months. This is where we were successful. This is where we failed. And this is the pivot that we get to make over the next year and make some really strategic decisions going into, December and January. So this will be great.
I mean, you think about what really does happen. Think about it. We get to the end of December and what happens? The velocity of the dealership just picks up.
It goes straight to
the rest of the world slows down. In the dealership, it picks up. Before you know it, you're halfway through January, and then you don't have a plan, and you're trying to still figure out what happened last year. And this year, let's be honest, like a lot of new tech is entering the market. Right. Yeah. All the words, I mean, we'll say it now, so I'm sure we'll say it again, but AI has been thrown around. CDPs are actually hitting a point of, it's almost like a maturing point now where the CDP conversation started a couple of years ago. And now this year, people have started to like take meaningful steps, measurable steps in implementing. So for a lot of people, this is the first year they're measuring any CDP activity. Yep. Right. And seeing how that's impacted things. So,
and even just from like a pricing and availability, there's been, where we've had kind of like full years of a very similar vibe. There's almost been a segment of 3 years in a year where you've had different pricing and availability and even like interest rates and access to credit have totally shifted. And people have been trying to balance, like, how do I continue to market within these, the changing dynamics at maybe a quicker pace than we have over the last 3 years, because it's all kind of been wrapped into one big, ginormous money vibe. and this year, everybody's honestly been, what I've been noticing a lot is like the testing, trialing, trying to figure out the next new thing has been so fast paced this year. Like everybody's asking that question so often that I wonder if we've almost like outpaced our ability to measure, right? So
wow, meaningfully measure, right? Without just looking. Well, let's bring the guest up. Let's bring up Subi and Drew and Sarah. We got the whole crew here.
We got a whole crew.
What's going on?
Hopefully y'all can get us in the smart vibes here in just a minute.
Definitely. When they come up, the smart vibes enter the room. Why don't we just start with Subi? And Subi, give us the state of the union for what we should be paying attention to in auditing 2024 in general, and why.
Yeah, I think the first step and why we wanted to split this up into two different parts is like, let's really talk about evaluation. And I'm gonna kick us right off and say, Kyle, how dare you? Mid-November is definitely not early. It is late. It is late in the game.
See, how dare you? How dare you?
Technically, half of November and half of December is really just a mad rush. You're not in strategy or planning or investigation mode.
Right.
We typically try to start these conversations for people who don't already have an ongoing overall plan and strategy back in October. That's when you really want to start looking at things, layering information in. And so we tend to have this conversation in our circles starting in October, and why this was such an awesome collaboration to have this discussion, because so many people are so used to let me close out the month and figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And right now, just if we want to talk about industry news and things that are happening in the world around us to layer into how we evaluate this current year, Kyle, you said it well. I'll give you one. You said it well when it feels like 3 years within one. What from inventory to affordability to all of the different factors that have weighed in. It is constantly a different game that we are in. So, taking a look at your data, zooming out, so we're not looking at each individual tactic in a very microscopic way, but zooming out and layering in on top of the fundamentals of what we already know, but adding to it is really crucial. So, brand is really going to be huge. If you don't have a message, and these are topics that you guys know better than anyone, it's just really, really key right now to start looking at how you've been performing, but on a higher level so that you can put a good strategy together for the following year.
So
A lot.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah. So a lot of what we do is we get a lot of tunnel vision in auto, right? Where we're like, this is the way that consumers are interacting with us. This is the way that our trends are going. This is the way that my competitors or my 20 group are doing things. And actually, I think what I would contend, and I'd love to hear your perspective on this, is that actually zooming out a little bit further and looking multi-vertical at either similar verticals or adjacent things where consumers are starting to give us signals about the way they want to interact or how they're interacting is really important to refining our strategies as well, how they've been trained or required to utilize the rest of digital in the world. It also trains their interaction with us. What's the zoom out perspective, not just like the industry trend stuff?
This is actually a concept that my last GM taught me when I was at the dealership. And you don't even have to go to other verticals to do this. But the art of zooming out is looking at all of the things that impact us as a business, our advertising, and our consumers. So if I'm talking strictly about this year, what are the factors and things that could have affected our results as an organization? Some of those things are going to be things like affordability, inventory, the flip-flopping of used and new vehicles and consumer sentiment around those things because of those other factors. But there are also things like politics. How has politics impacted advertising in general? And what is that going to do to our numbers? When we're evaluating and looking back over this year, we have to look at things as us as a group. Has our website changed? Has our technology changed? Where has our budget gone? How has it changed the mix of our budget? Because it's not just about, paid search or meta or a singular thing. It's about the overall strategy that you have. And sometimes those are environmental. Has there been a hurricane? Has there been, something that impacted us from selling the way that we need to? So zooming out is the art of pulling yourself back layer by layer to have, yes, you want to look at it from a micro perspective down to the specific tactic, but you also want to layer in all the things that could have impacted. So you're not making decisions in silos and you're making it for the larger business as a whole.
Could I ask let me drill down on a real practical question, because throughout these, I love it when people we can plant a little seed in someone's head. You mentioned how were our results affected by, you mentioned politics, you mentioned weather and hurricanes, and obviously all across the country, people impacted at varying levels of both of those things, right? Some severely when it comes to weather, some not so much when it comes to weather. Different states and different markets are going to be affected way heavier by the political campaign and the climate that there was, and than other states who maybe weren't in, a contended state and there wasn't as much political advertising. Can somebody just give us a few drips on how we would approach making like an adjustment for those things? Because I think the most dangerous thing that could happen is for somebody to say, well, it was an election year, and just broad brush across there and getting a pass, and therefore not understanding what really is happening with their ad dollars. So how would you advise people to just even take some steps into considering that as an adjustment layer?
I think a big piece of it is benchmarking. Like obviously when we talk about GA4 historically, we wanted people to have that historical data and set up GA4 early so we can understand what is normal. And obviously it's really, really difficult over the last 4 years. And we saw it, you can't compare anything to what happened in 2020. But we've gotten great data since then. And we need to have that benchmark and understand what does normal look like. So then when things start to get wonky and abnormal, we understand that, at some point, if you're a Pennsylvania dealership, the political year is going to have a massive impact for 2024, and it's going to be abnormal. But what is that consistent through line that we can kind of compare against?
How would you advise people to start to even? It's really tough, right? We put together the last 3 years, and it's really hard to say this is normal. I mean, you can go back to 2019, but even then, I think it's one of those big enigmas that people have that I just don't know what to do. Are there some thoughts toward a best practice on how you might establish a benchmark or a baseline because of the tumultuous last several years?
Yeah, I don't know if there is a normal. I know I said it like 4
No,
times.
There's definitely not a normal.
No,
I'm just saying, like,
really not.
I'm not saying there's a normal, but like, what are some indicators or maybe some things that you could just say, hey, look at this in a way, right? Look at this element in a way. Just because I think going into 2025 is probably one of the best shots we have at a normal year, even though, like,
you just jinxed it.
No. As the words are coming out of my mouth, I'm thinking of all the promises are being made, and I'm like, no. But what I'm saying, like, from a sense of inventory, manufacturers, right? Like, we still do have the volatilities of EV and finance, and however, even if we just take inventory and manufacturer stability as an indicator from the very beginning of the year, we're going in with everyone kind of having largely, manufacturers speaking, control over what their output is. You know what I'm saying?
I think from my perspective, and something that's really been helpful for us and my team on 2024 is goal setting. And I know that doesn't sound like a game-changing thing, but if you get to the end of we're November 2024, and hey, we never set any goals, we can't measure ourselves on anything. So really making sure that we have goals set for the year and we're evaluating based on how we did this past year, and making sure that we're continuing to be the better version of ourselves for our dealer and our strategy. And then always rethinking like what our marketing mix is kind of looking like for each dealership, because things are going to be changing. We need to pivot in automotive quickly. Sometimes if there's like a stop sale on any sort of vehicle, if something happens again with, different parts, we need to be able to pivot. But just setting those like larger overarching goals so that you can actually measure yourself when it gets to the end of the year, and how can we get better for next year.
And I think those goals don't necessarily have to be, we talk a lot about input and output metrics. And the input metrics are more things that you can control. It's actually something that Amazon is very big on. It's not, hey, can I drive more clicks? Can I get more conversions? Can I sell more cars? It's what leads to you doing that. And whether it's in SEO and producing more content, or having like a really robust ad strategy that, accounts for your inventory specifically. It's honing in on, really what are those things that you can control throughout the year that then drive clicks, conversions, sales, etc.
Yeah, I want to add to both. Just, I think if we're specifically answering your question, Paul, and I don't know if this does it, but one of the things that we've been over the last 2 years, maybe more, really pivoting the mindset from these 30-day cycles to much more annual and quarterly, which is why you want to start planning in the October, maybe November, but definitely have it hammered in before January 1st, because then you can start to really, one, have those goals defined, have your GA4 set up correctly, and you're creating your benchmarks, or at least evaluating correctly. You can always adjust, right? You can adjust every single month based on whatever new thing the world throws at us in that particular month or quarter. But what's happening is when we make those larger scale strategies and stick to them, there's a much easier way to evaluate than, oh, leads aren't in, so let's cut this thing and let's start that thing. We don't have enough of a big picture to evaluate, and we're oftentimes pulling things before we can actually see the success of it or evaluate if it is a good addition to us or not, because it's hard to speak in generalizations because each platform is different, but
Right.
like a Google, it takes time for some of those things to come to fruition and driving those rates down the way that we need. And we end up making these gut reactions that are actually harmful to the overall strategy of, especially for mapping it to a specific goal that we've already outlined of what we want that outcome to be, and then choosing those tactics accordingly.
So in the second half of this time together, I want to really cover two distinct things. One is like a couple of tech trends that I think are really important for people to understand that happened this year. So I want to cover that. And then I want to make sure that we don't miss some like practical application, like the how to of the questions to audit. So starting with tech trends, and there's two that I'd like to pay attention to. One is the increase of AI-based search. So specifically with Perplexity, ChatGPT, and Gemini driving and even Google's own AI-driven search results. Like, what are we seeing with that as a challenge within the marketing spectrum, both on the paid marketing and the SEO side? So start there, and also if you can speak to the increase in the adoption and requirement of adoption in PMAX, right? Because we had much more granular control before the push of Google to kind of move everyone into this PMAX version of advertising, which they control a lot more of the algorithm. So can you speak to those two particular things and how they've changed the way marketing and advertising looks over this last year?
Drew's favorite topic.
Yeah,
we could be here a long time.
Right. Yeah,
they know you well, I guess.
100%. Yeah. So when AI overviews were really released for Google, it has changed drastically since then. They released it and kind of pulled it back because there was a lot of hallucinations from Google's AI features. And we're now seeing kind of what everyone expected at the beginning come to fruition, where AI overviews are populating for a lot of informational searches, which basically is something like, how often should I get my oil changed? And what it will lead to downstream for is fewer click-through rates to a website, more people staying on Google, which Google loves. And that's part of the purpose of that, is they want to hold that data. But dealerships and agencies need to we still want those users to come to the site. And what changes is that, maybe they're not doing as much base level research and clicking through to your website, but they still need somewhere to buy a car. As of now, they cannot directly buy a car through Google. So we need to make sure that our dealerships are showing up in those AI overviews almost as a branding opportunity. And kind of I guess it hasn't happened yet, but I see it kind of coming in the near future, is more people are going elsewhere for searching. It's not just, hey, I'm going to go to Google and do all of my research there. It's using TikTok. It's using ChatGPT. They just came out with Search GPT that has a Chrome browser extension. People aren't there yet necessarily holistically, but for a lot of non-auto trends, that's where it's going. If you look at I use this example.
And GPT is Bing.
Yeah, 100%.
That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, it's like drastically changing. And when we talk about SEO, kind of where my head's going is, it's not search experience or search engine optimization. It's search optimization in general. How are you showing up across all search platforms? Facebook, TikTok, Reddit, Google, ChatGPT, Claude AI. It's just, there's infinite possibilities where people can search, and you need to make sure that your business is showing up, because the search is no longer linear. I'm going to go to Google or Yahoo, DuckDuckGo. That's just not how it's going to work in the future.
Well, I mean, even think of what's going to happen in the next 12 months, right? Those of us on the screen are probably heavy users of AI empowered search, and we've been using it for a while. It's become my go-to, but I'm actually starting, and this is probably indicative because they're my kids, but like I'm watching my kids start to use GPT as search, and they've been, like, we've talked about this, where they've used, social media platforms as search and things like that. But like the fact that it's non-linear, 12 months from now, I think we're going to be having a starkly different conversation Well, maybe we're going to have this conversation in October next year to make sure Subi's happy, and not November.
Thank you.
But it's good. But it's going to be starkly different. And so I think that is a big question. It's like, where do all those sources pull information from? Right? I mean, where do they pull in information from? If I search something on GPT, is it just triggering a Google search? Like, how does that work? Just for the people who might be thinking about this next year, and just open a little door inside their mind to start orienting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we could get into like the theory of large language models, which we absolutely don't need to.
Like the 20-second version.
Yeah. I mean, it essentially pulls all of the information across the web and corroborates different sources to create almost a summary of whatever your search is. The designation is trying to pull in the best result for what you typed in. And you can see in a lot of GPT models is that then you can refine that search and say, hey, this isn't what I was looking for.
So would it be safe to say it's like basic search information, and then it's like social media content, Wikipedia, content on your website, so that if you're actually making content, it's actually not, and even if you make content and people don't look at it and it doesn't get a view, it might actually have value from this type of search in the future?
100%. As long as it's crawlable. I mean, that's really the thing is, you could have a special on your website, a least special, that's more effective than any piece of written content that you've ever created, as long as that least special is crawlable.
Got it.
And I also don't want to ignore the power of Gen Z, who millennials in general have now become a lot more fragmented in behaviors and preferences. There's also Gen Z who has a very different experience in search than millennials do. I was going to say than we do and give away my age. It doesn't even matter anymore. But the reality is there's a big volume that's searching solely on TikTok. Are we there yet to do all of our vehicle searches there? No. But is that the thing that's comfortable for them? And are we at the place where they're at? No. Right? Like, that's why the people that are doing it well, there's some dealerships that are doing it well on some of these platforms, and they're the only ones that are showing up. So I think
how about that?
We can't ignore that as part of the 2025 strategy.
Nationally, right?
100%.
Okay, so real quick, let's get practical on like what are a few questions? Maybe each of you can give like one or two questions that you should be asking of your 2024 results and strategy, right? Let's do the look back. We're doing the look forward in the next one. What are one or two questions that you can ask of the results or the reports or the strategy or the business outcomes that can give us some insights into how we go to the next webinar and plan based on those? What are one or two of those questions? We'll just go Subi, Drew, and Sarah. You can each help. Sarah's going to have the hardest job.
Great. I love that I go first.
Yes.
I'm going to probably focus mine on media mix. I think people say that they need to do advertising or dig ad, and they have the things that they think that they need to do. But we really, especially at a time where we have to earn the consumers, just as we're layering in all the things we need to evaluate, we have to earn their right to consider us again, which we haven't had to do in past years, in the last few years. So one, do I have the right media mix? Am I putting my dollars, the right number of dollars in the right places to reach the shoppers where they need to be, how they need to be? And then part two for me is, am I driving them to the right places? Is my website optimized for a good user experience? Is my brand and my messaging saying what I need it to say to convince those shoppers? And when they do click, are they landing on something to continue the shopping experience, provide them the answers they're looking for? Or is it just unnecessarily complicated because that's how we've been doing it, and we can't take off that lens to really think through their experience? And these aren't novel things. These are just things that were fundamentals that we have to get back to. Paul, we literally had this exact same conversation 6 months ago at ASOTU. But now we have to start adding little baby steps to innovate and add on to it every single time. But if you're not doing those fundamentals, let's start there.
Yeah, I'm going to continue on a little bit with Subi, but we spend so much money driving people to our website. but we often forget what that website experience actually is and how we're kind of converting people.
You see, now you're going to preach, and you and I are going to have
don't
to
get
just
Kyle
chat there
fired up.
now.
Yeah. I mean, how many CTAs is too many on an SRP or VDP? But
just one more than I already have.
Just one more. Yeah. That one's going to be the magic bullet. But I think continuing on with that is, do I have a way to effectively measure my overall marketing mix as well as each individual channel? I think we fall into a trap so often of exclusively measuring campaign success through how it looks in Google Analytics, even though we know that not every tactic or campaign type is made for that. We talk a lot about influence at Stream and how all of our advertising channels are influencing each other and working together to drive people to a site or drive people to buy a car. So going back to, I guess this is more than a question, but how am I measuring success before I move to 2025?
Yeah. What is the measure of success? I like
Sarah, you're up.
Yeah. And I think, I think it fits perfectly is, who is your audience? Like, who have you been talking to all year long? And if you haven't seen success in your campaigns, going back to your media mix and seeing who you're reaching at what time and where, maybe you need to reevaluate your mix based on that audience. I think right now in digital, with AI and, Drew talking about all the different places that people are researching now, how are we following these people and hitting them at the right place and the right time? So making sure and asking that question of like, who have we been talking to all year, owning that audience, and then making sure that we're effectively utilizing it. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things is in all the noise, hitting the right people and getting through that noise through our advertising media mix.
I think that is such a great way to conclude that, because as Paul talked about at the top, with people not actively, maybe it was Kyle, I don't mean to take away your thunder, but CDP data, people don't even know what that really means. They know they have to have one, but first party data, like Sarah said, is so crucial. And I think we've always wanted to look at, are we hitting the right audiences at the right time? And if we're not taking action for the audiences we have on our sites to be able to make our advertising as drilled down as possible, this is such an awesome time period we're living in for that, because we're not just giving away our money to say, hey, really horrible media provider that doesn't even tell us who we're targeting, but I have to take your word for it that you're spending the money and putting it in front of the people the way that I need to. Instead of that, we have these solutions that we can drill down right to their household. So 100%. What a great way to like kind of emphasize that.
All right, listen, I think we are. These 30-minute ones go so fast. I just looked at the clock.
But it's good. It packs a lot in. We've got a second one. We can come back to it. We're going to be
the best part.
Exactly.
That's the best part. In the meantime, if people want a little more help doing this, they want to reach out, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can reach out to any one of us. We're very easy to find on LinkedIn, especially me, because there's no one else in auto with my name. But I can connect you to these two easily.
Perfect.
You can also message marketing@streamcompanies.com and they'll funnel it to us to make sure you get your answers to any questions you have. But we're very, very open, happy to help and audit and do all those things.
Great.
Talk
and
about
it's
Google.
Yeah, right. So it's marketing@streamcompanies.com. Let them know that you're calling because you were on this and you have questions about this. We want to make sure that you register for the part 2 of this webinar. We just posted a link in the comments on all the platforms. If you're registered and you're on this list and you're watching this, we will also send out an email reminder so you can be on part 2, which is the not looking back. We're looking to the future. Subi, Drew, Sarah, thank you so much for serving the industry the way you do and for giving everybody a little peek inside the best strategy for measuring 2024 with us today.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget, this was part 1 of a 2-part series. So the next one is going to be building the playbook for 2025. That's going to be on Wednesday, December 4th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget to go ahead and sign up. You'll go to ASOTU.com, click the media drop down, and then select Edge Webinars. We're looking forward to seeing you next time. Have a wonderful day.